The box I was told never to open. Story 1, The Arrival. The small, unmarked box appeared at my doorstep on an ordinary Thursday morning. There was no note, no delivery slip, nothing that hinted at who might have left it. Its surface was smooth, almost unnaturally so, and it smelled faintly of old wood and something metallic, like iron. I hesitated before touching it. Something deep in my gut screamed that I shouldn't, that some instinct older than reason was warning me against curiosity. Still, my fingers itched to lift the lid, to uncover the secrets someone had gone to lengths to hide from me. Peering inside, I found a single photograph. It was of my bedroom, taken last night while I slept. I froze, recognizing the angle, the shadow of the curtains, the faint glow of the alarm clock on the nightstand. Someone had been inside. The hair on my arm stood up. Every rational thought tried to convince me it was a trick, a staged photo. But no one else had a key to my apartment. No one had been in my home. And yet, the photograph proved otherwise. I set the box down on the kitchen table, my heart hammering. The photograph felt alive, almost pulsating with a quiet menace. I couldn't tear my eyes away, as if looking would somehow keep me safe from what I hadn't yet seen. Over the next hour, small, almost imperceptible changes began to happen in the apartment. Objects were slightly moved, doors creaked open for no reason, and I kept thinking I saw a shadow dart across the corner of my vision. I told myself it was nerves, paranoia, but the unease only deepened. The box remained on the table, closed now, as if daring me to open it again. The photograph lay beside it, unblinking, unchanging, yet it carried a tension I couldn't explain. I wanted to throw it out, burn it, anything to rid myself of the oppressive weight it carried. That night, sleep eluded me. Every creak of the floorboards sounded deliberate. Every flicker of light from the street lamps outside seemed to cast moving shapes on my walls. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, not just in my apartment, but through the photograph itself. By morning, I had made a decision. I would put the box in the closet, lock it away, and never touch it again. Surely, ignoring it would make it harmless. I told myself it had to be the safest option, though a part of me wondered if there even was a safe option. The day passed in an uneasy haze. Work felt distant, conversations sounded muffled, and I constantly checked my phone for messages that never came. The photograph sat on the table, staring at me like a warning I couldn't read. That evening, I returned home to find the box on the kitchen counter again. I had left it in the closet. There was no way it had moved on its own. The photograph was now inside the box, folded neatly, with the image of me asleep, staring up at me from within. I felt my chest tighten. My apartment was empty. No one was there. The air was thick, almost electric, as if charged by the weight of the unknown. The box's lid beckoned silently. I didn't touch it. I couldn't. Sleep that night was impossible. Every sound, my own breathing, the distant hum of the refrigerator felt amplified, malevolent. I swore I could hear whispers, soft but distinct, murmuring from the direction of the box. My name again. Morning came reluctantly. Sunlight barely pierced the drawn curtains, yet shadows lingered where they shouldn't. The box sat innocently on the counter, wooden and smooth, smelling faintly metallic, as if nothing had happened. Yet everything had changed. I avoided looking at the photograph for days, but every now and then, a corner of it would appear in my peripheral vision. A glimpse and then gone. It seemed to move when I wasn't watching directly, shifting in ways that made no sense. I began hearing footsteps at night, slow, deliberate, pacing the apartment. They were too heavy to be imagined, too rhythmic to be random. My bedroom door sometimes creaked open slowly while I pretended to sleep, hoping whatever it was would leave. One morning, I found the photograph on my bed. I hadn't touched it in days. I didn't remember placing it there. I wanted to scream, to destroy it, but something held me back. I felt trapped by an invisible thread, bound to the box and the photograph inside it. I started leaving lights on, hoping the brightness would protect me. But the shadows still lingered in corners, and the faint metallic smell from the box filled the air, even when I was miles from the kitchen. I was being hunted, and the hunter was in a wooden box, silent, patient, and unrelenting. The days blurred together. I avoided my apartment when I could, slept on friends' couches, went to work early, returned late. Still, the box was always waiting, silently mocking me. My reflection in the mirror sometimes didn't move when I did, a silent echo of my exhaustion and fear. One evening, I finally dared to lift the lid again. Inside, the photograph had changed. Now, I was awake in my bed, staring directly at the camera, eyes wide in terror. But I hadn't taken this picture. I hadn't seen myself like that. And yet, it was real. I set the box down, shaking, and realized I had a choice. Leave it closed, and the terror would continue. Open it, and I might understand. Either way, I felt the threads of reality fraying around me, each one tied inexorably to the box. I've kept it on the table since then. I don't touch it. I don't look too long. But every night, the photograph changes subtly, imperceptibly, until I feel eyes on me even when I close my own. If you ever receive a box like this, don't open it. Don't touch it. Some things are better left unknown. And if you've made it this far, maybe consider subscribing. Shadows are always watching, and the stories I share, they only grow darker from here. Story 2. Whispers from Within. It started at the office. A small, unassuming box appeared on my desk the moment I arrived one Monday morning. No note, no indication of who placed it there. Its surface was smooth, the wood dark and polished, and a faint metallic scent hung in the air, almost imperceptibly. Curiosity gnawed at me, but something deeper told me not to open it. Something primal whispered that curiosity could have consequences. Yet, the office was empty, and no one else seemed interested. My fingers traced the edge, hesitant until I lifted the lid. Inside was nothing but a single black card. I picked it up. The moment I touched it, I heard a faint whisper. My name, spoken softly, almost imperceptibly, as if someone were calling from the corner of the room. I froze, glancing around. The office was deserted. I put the card back in the box, convinced it was a trick of the mind. But the whispers didn't stop. They grew louder when I tried to ignore them, curling around my ears like smoke, speaking words I wasn't ready to understand. They weren't threatening, exactly, but there was a malevolent curiosity in them, a sense that I had been chosen. Over the next hour, the whispers became clearer. They spoke of things I had never told anyone, secrets hidden deep inside my thoughts. At first, it was subtle a fear, a memory, but soon the words became precise, naming incidents only I could know, calling attention to things I had long hoped to forget. I tried to leave the office, but my chair refused to roll. My feet felt heavy, as if invisible hands pressed them down. The whispers intensified, murmuring directly into my mind, urging me to open the box further, to reveal what was inside. I couldn't resist. Trembling, I lifted the card again. The whispers surged, almost deafening, and the air around me seemed to thicken. Shapes began to move at the edge of my vision shadows, with no source, reflections that shouldn't exist. I felt watched, analyzed, as though the box itself were alive. By evening, I was completely consumed. Every whispered word revealed something more, secrets from my past, and thoughts I had never dared voice aloud. My coworkers passed by, asking if I was okay, but I couldn't respond. My attention was fully captured, trapped in the box's invisible grasp. I decided to confide in my friend, hoping to share the burden. I showed her the box, explaining its arrival and the whispers. But as she leaned in, the card fluttered in my hand, and the whispers became a chorus of voices, all naming her secrets as well. Her face turned pale, and she recoiled. The office lights flickered. The shadows stretched unnaturally across the walls. Papers on desks shifted as though an unseen wind blew through the room, yet the windows were closed. The whispers intensified, overlapping voices now, forming a symphony of private knowledge that seemed intent on revealing everything. I tried to destroy the box. I hit it against the floor, stomped on it, even tried to burn it. Nothing worked. The card reappeared, perfectly intact, whispers resuming as though I had done nothing at all. Fear replaced anger. This was beyond understanding. The box had become a part of the office, of me, something that refused to be removed. Night fell, and I stayed late, hoping the quiet would return. Instead, the whispers followed me to the elevator, into the stairwell, and even into my car. Driving home, I imagined them spreading to the city, seeping into quiet offices and homes, invisible, watching, waiting. At home, I placed the box on my kitchen counter, hoping to contain it until morning. But even in the silence of my apartment, the whispers continued. Sometimes softly, sometimes nearly shouting, each word exposing a thought I had never admitted, a fear I had tried to bury. Sleep was impossible. Every creak, every shadow in my room felt alive. I could almost see shapes, moving, tiny twisting forms that darted in and out of my vision. I told myself I was imagining it, that exhaustion was playing tricks. But deep down, I knew the box had begun to control perception itself. Days passed. I avoided everyone at work, working remotely when possible. Yet I could still hear the whispers in my apartment. Sometimes they were my own voice, sometimes someone else's. Always personal, always invasive, always unrelenting. Finally, I realized there was only one way to escape. I would have to leave the box entirely behind. But even then, the whispers had followed me, embedding themselves in my memory, in my thoughts. I carried the knowledge unwillingly, each secret a tiny chain around my mind. I don't know if the box ever leaves a person alone. I can only warn you, if a box appears with a whisper inside, don't open it, don't touch it. Whatever curiosity it sparks can invade every corner of your mind, exposing you in ways you never wanted known. And if you're brave enough to hear stories like this, maybe consider subscribing. Halfway Dark shares what others dare not see, and the whispers, they're only beginning. Story 3. The Reflection Box. It was a quiet Saturday when I found the box at a local thrift shop. Dust covered its dark wood, and the label read simply, "Never open." Something about it drew me in, an unexplainable pull that made my stomach tighten. I hesitated, but eventually carried it home, feeling the weight of its presence in my arms. Once inside my apartment, I placed it carefully on the coffee table. The room seemed heavier, air thicker, as though the box carried its own atmosphere. The polished surface reflected light strangely, warping the surroundings in subtle, unsettling ways. My reflection in the window caught my eye, though it seemed off. The urge to open it was overwhelming. My hands trembled as I lifted the lid. Inside was a small hand mirror, blackened at the edges and cold to the touch. I stared at it, expecting to see only my reflection, but what stared back was something else entirely. My reflection didn't mimic my movements. Its eyes were wider, pupils darker, its expression twisted into something I didn't recognize. I tried blinking, moving, shaking my head, but it did not follow. It was alive, separate, aware, and studying me in ways I could not comprehend. I slammed the lid shut, heart racing. Rationality fought to convince me it was a trick of the light, an optical illusion, but my gut refused to listen. Something was in that mirror, and it had noticed me the moment I looked. That night, I slept fitfully, dreams invaded by reflections, moving independently in every mirror I passed. When I woke, the mirror lay on the floor beside the box, though I had placed it inside. Its edges were darker than before, almost swallowing the reflection within, twisting it further into something malicious. I began noticing subtle changes around the apartment. Shadows stretched differently, corners seemed sharper, and I could swear the reflections in other surfaces lagged fractionally behind my movements, like echoes. The mirror seemed to communicate without sound, a silent awareness that made the hair on my arms stand on end. Desperate, I tried covering it with a cloth, leaving it untouched in the corner of the living room. But when I returned from the bathroom, the cloth was gone, the mirror upright and facing me. My reflection smiled when I did not, and in that smile, I felt a darkness reaching toward me, teasing the edges of my sanity. Days passed. I avoided mirrors, glass surfaces, anything that could hold a reflection. Yet the mirror in the box called to me, whispered through its stillness, drawing me back with an irresistible force. Each glance revealed more changes subtle at first, then increasingly impossible. My eyes appeared hollow, my movements slower, my surroundings distorted. I tried showing it to a friend, hoping someone else could see what I saw. They gasped, frozen, insisting the mirror was different. Their reflection wavered, and they stepped back, terrified. The mirror's awareness was not limited to me. It observed everyone, studied every movement, feeding on the fear it inspired. One evening, while cooking, I caught a fleeting glimpse in the oven's glass. The reflection smiled again. Not mine, something else. The shadow of it lingered even when I turned my head. Panic set in. I realized it could escape the mirror, somehow manifest in the periphery of perception. A presence untethered, yet always near. I placed the box in the bathroom, locked the door, tried to ignore it. Still, at night, I heard soft knocking sounds, subtle footsteps, faint whispers. My own voice sometimes answered, repeating words I had never spoken aloud. The mirror in the box had grown, expanded its reach beyond its physical confines. Sleep was impossible. Every reflective surface, every glint of light, became a potential doorway. I avoided leaving the apartment, avoided the world, but it followed. The reflections in windows across the street seemed to echo my fear, moving slightly differently than reality. Finally, I accepted it. The box in the mirror would not be contained, could not be destroyed. Rational solutions failed. Its awareness had merged with mine, a dark companion in every reflective surface, a silent observer that would not relent. If you find a box labeled "Never Open," do not lift the lid. Some things reflect more than the world. They reflect your soul, your fears, your deepest self. And sometimes, the reflection is not yours at all. If you want to see more stories like this and witness what lingers in the shadows, subscribing to Halfway Dark will keep you close to every tale, every darkness waiting just beyond your sight. Story 4, Midnight Offering. The box arrived quietly, left on the doorstep with no indication of its origin. Its surface was dark, polished wood, and a faint smell of earth and decay emanated from it. I hesitated before picking it up, a cold shiver running down my spine as I cradled it in my arms. Inside the apartment, I set it on the table, the room suddenly feeling smaller, heavier. The air thickened with a strange, almost metallic scent. I lifted the lid cautiously. Nothing but a folded note rested inside, its handwriting jagged and unfamiliar. Do not ignore the time. Midnight knows all. I laughed nervously, telling myself it was a prank, some elaborate joke. Yet a sense of unease grew as I heard faint scratching from somewhere deep within the apartment. The sound was soft at first, like nails on wood, but persistent, deliberate, and impossible to locate. That night, I stayed awake, anxious and alert. Every tick of the clock echoed unnaturally, stretching seconds into what felt like minutes. Shadows pooled in corners, shifting as though alive. And then I heard the whispers. Not a voice, but multiple voices, indistinct and haunting, murmuring my name. At exactly midnight, the box moved. I had left it on the table, and now it sat in the center of the living room floor, as if it had grown legs and walked there on its own. The note inside fluttered open, revealing a single word: observe. I could see nothing beyond the dim glow of the lamp. Then, slowly, shadows began to emerge, forming shapes that resembled people. They didn't walk, didn't speak, yet they moved with a sinister rhythm. My eyes traced each figure, their forms distorting and stretching, faces blurred, fingers elongated. I tried to leave the room, to escape, but my feet felt rooted, heavy as stone. The shadows circled the box, pausing occasionally as if waiting for some signal. I realized with growing terror that the box was the conductor, the source of this unnatural manifestation. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time seemed meaningless. The shadows twisted closer, their movements synchronized with the faint scratching now growing louder. The air pulsed with energy, thick and suffocating. I wanted to scream, to shatter the box, but my arms refused to obey. Finally, the shadows receded, dissolving back into darkness. The box remained on the floor, silent, ominous, as though nothing had happened. I collapsed in a chair, heart pounding, unsure if I had truly seen what I thought I had. Each night after that, the box demanded attention at midnight. Shadows, whispers, fleeting glimpses of impossible forms haunted my apartment. Friends who visited would later insist they saw nothing, yet I could feel their unease, the brush of fear they hadn't dared to acknowledge. Attempts to remove the box from my apartment failed. It always returned, placed neatly in the center of the living room by some unseen force. I stopped sleeping entirely, consumed by dread, watching every shadow, listening to every creak, knowing that midnight was the moment it would call me once more. Even in daylight, the room seemed darker, the corners sharper. I could no longer enjoy solitude, fearing that the box would act without warning. Its presence permeated everything, my thoughts, my movements, my very perception of reality. I finally accepted a grim routine. I would prepare for midnight, arrange the apartment, and brace myself. The box thrived on observation, feeding on attention, but resisting entirely seemed impossible. The whispers, the shadows, the intangible horror, it all awaited the strike of 12. If you ever encounter a box like this, never ignore the time. Midnight listens, watches, and shapes the world in ways you cannot comprehend. The consequences of curiosity are not confined to sight or sound. They extend to thought, memory, and fear itself. And if you want more stories that explore what lurks in the corners of the world, subscribing to Halfway Dark ensures the shadows never go unnoticed. Story 5. The Forgotten Room. It was during a night shift that I found the box. The building I cleaned had a forgotten storage room, one that seemed to have been sealed for decades. Dust covered every surface, and the smell of mildew was overpowering. The box lay in the center of the room, perfectly clean, polished, and incongruously new. The label read simply, "Never open." I hesitated. My instincts screamed to leave it, yet curiosity pushed me closer. I picked it up, feeling a cold vibration run through my fingers. The air thickened, heavy and oppressive, as though the room itself had noticed my decision. Inside was a collection of objects, each meticulously arranged: a child's shoe, a broken watch, a tattered diary. I recognized some of the items immediately, objects reported missing years ago from unsolved cases that had haunted the city. The realization hit me like a blow. These were not just random items. The shadows in the room seemed to stretch toward me, alive with silent intent. Every sound I made echoed strangely, as if the walls themselves were listening. I backed away, but my gaze kept returning to the box, unable to look away, as though it demanded my attention. A faint whisper rose from the box, almost inaudible, yet unmistakable. "Do you see them now?" My pulse raced. I tried to tell myself it was imagination, stress from working late, but the whisper persisted, clearer now, growing louder with each heartbeat. The items inside the box began to shift. The shoe moved slightly. The diary opened on its own, pages flipping rapidly. The watch ticked backward, each second echoing unnaturally in the silent room. I wanted to leave, yet something bound me in place, rooted to the spot by an invisible force. I realized the box contained more than objects. It held the memories, the remnants of the people who had vanished. Each item a fragment, a whisper of a life stolen, a story unfinished. And somehow, it was showing me, demanding I witness it. Hours passed, or maybe minutes, I couldn't tell. Shadows danced across the walls, forming shapes that resembled figures frozen in fear, faces contorted, reaching toward me silently. I felt their gaze upon me, accusing, desperate. I tried to leave the room, but the door would not budge. Every corner seemed to stretch impossibly, elongating the walls, trapping me within the confines of the forgotten space. The box pulsed slightly, as if alive, every beat synchronized with the racing of my own heart. I shouted, screamed for help, but the sound was swallowed by the darkness. The whispers grew, overlapping voices of those lost, recounting moments I could not begin to comprehend. Their stories intertwined with my fear, binding me closer to the box's power. Desperate, I grabbed the box and ran, finally bursting into the fluorescent-lit hallway. The voices ceased instantly, replaced by a suffocating silence that lingered far longer than it should. I carried the box home, unable to part with it, yet terrified of its presence. At night, I placed it on a table in my apartment. The whispers returned, soft, deliberate, sometimes naming people I recognized from the news. Sleep became impossible. The box's hold extended beyond the room, into every reflection, every shadow, into my very thoughts. I have come to understand one truth. The box doesn't simply reveal horror, it preserves it, stores it, extends it beyond the limits of normal perception. Those who encounter it are marked, forever aware of what lurks just beyond sight. If you ever find a box in a forgotten place, sealed and unremarkable, remember this: never open it. What seems like curiosity may invite horrors that never leave, that follow you into every quiet corner of your life. And if you want to continue exploring what the world hides in the shadows, subscribing to Halfway Dark ensures you are never alone when the darkness whispers. Story 6. The Final Warning. The box appeared again. I had gotten rid of it before thrown it in the river, burned it, buried it deep in the woods, but somehow it was waiting on my kitchen table when I came home that night. A small folded note sat on top of it, the handwriting harsh and desperate. "Do not open this again. This is your final warning." My hands trembled as I picked it up. The paper smelled faintly of smoke, like it had survived fire, and the words seemed to shimmer faintly in the dim kitchen light. I wanted to believe it was just some cruel trick, a lingering nightmare, but the weight in my chest told me otherwise. I backed away, trying to ignore it, to pretend it wasn't there. But the silence in the room grew unnatural, pressing down on me, amplifying every heartbeat until it echoed in my skull. The shadows seemed too sharp, the corners too deep, and the box's presence filled the air like static. At midnight, the scratching began. It came from inside the box, this time soft at first, like fingernails on wood, then stronger, louder, desperate. I pressed my hands over my ears, but it grew anyway, burrowing into my thoughts. The note fluttered to the floor, landing face up. The handwriting had changed. "If you open this, it will not be you who remains." I should have run. I should have left the house and never returned. But some part of me, a stubborn, doomed curiosity, reached for the lid. My fingers brushed the smooth wood, and for a split second, The scratching stopped, as if the thing inside was holding its breath, waiting. When I opened it, there was no object inside, no note. Instead, I saw myself tiny, distorted, trapped in the box's interior, as though I had been shrunk and imprisoned. My miniature reflection screamed silently, pounding its fists against invisible walls. A shadow moved behind me. I turned, heart hammering, and saw a figure standing just inside the kitchen doorway. It looked exactly like me, same clothes, same face, same horrified expression, but it wasn't frozen like I was. It smiled, slowly, cruelly, and began to move. I tried to back away, but my legs wouldn't obey. The box vibrated violently, and I felt a pull, like invisible threads were wrapping around me, dragging me forward. The figure stepped closer, and I understood with bone-deep certainty. It wasn't replacing me. It was already me. The last thing I remember clearly is my own voice whispering, "Final warning." After that, the lights flickered, and everything collapsed into shadow. Now I don't know if I'm still here. Sometimes I see my reflection lagging behind, smiling when I'm not, moving differently. Sometimes I feel the weight of wood and darkness pressing against me, and I wonder if I'm the one inside the box, screaming silently while something else wears my face. If you ever see a box with a note warning you not to open it, don't make my mistake. Heed the warning. The box doesn't forgive, and it doesn't forget. It only replaces. And if stories like this chill you as much as they haunt me, subscribing to Halfway Dark ensures you'll never face the shadows alone.